righty. Good morning. My name is Joey DiBenedetto. I'm the managing director of sales and growth over at Real Estate Experts, and I have an expert on fire for you today. So I'm here with real estate expert Tony Fery, who has been with Real Estate Experts and the Brett Jennings Group since literally, I think, since like day two of inception. You are what we call an OG, and you are running the systems in plays that actually produce some pretty amazing results. And so, Tony, I am excited to have this conversation with you because I think you are probably probably the most consistent and hardworking agent I've talked to in a long, long time. You do the work and it produces the results. But before we get into the work, because we will get into that, I do want to ask you the question, why real estate? What did you do before real estate? What got you into real estate?
Yeah, no, thank you, Joey. Interesting. Yeah, it was necessity. What got me into real estate? Necessity. I was in corporate America, managing inside sales teams, early 40s. And, I'd come home and my wife, Jen, she would say, she's like, you don't talk about your day. Like, you don't have joy. And it was just one of those things where managing inside sales in your early 40s and not making the leap to outside sales, it was one of those things where I just really felt like I was at a crossroads of my life. Because my buddies of same age were CEOs and, VPs of sales. And here I was, this little inside sales manager. And so really, I kind of sat there and, started soul searching and thinking, all right, like I can't totally reset the clock. But in looking at it, I said, what are the two things that you know about yourself, Tony? And for me, it was hard work and hustle. Like I came from that. I was the son of a general contractor. And so looking at that, I'm like, all right, well, if you take those two things into another industry that's totally new, what's it going to be? For me, the conversation was insurance or real estate. Just so happened that my children went to the same school as Brett Jennings. I started chatting with him about life in real estate. After a few conversations with him and his market proven process is the guy, like if you follow what I do with my team's strategy, he showed me what a couple guys had made. He's like, this guy, here's what he made last quarter. And I did the math on that. I'm like, dude, like if I do what that guy did 4 times, I will make 2x of what I made last year. And he said, this guy, he's kind of okay. He's like, with your hustle, he's like, I think you can make this laying down on your back. So yeah, that's what got me into real estate.
So you were basically you had outside influence come into you saying like, look, I don't think you're happy. And you were like, you're right. I'm not happy. I'm not where I want to be. And I'm ready to take it into my own hands because I trust myself. And you went and looked for a proven system or process that you could follow, or at least somebody that had the results that you could follow. And it sounds like you found it.
Yeah.
And you've been running that race for how long now? How long have you been in the real estate world?
So I got my license February of 2016. So I just passed 8 years as a licensed realtor.
Congratulations, you made it. Feel like year two is a hurdle, and then year five is a hurdle. Now you're in the money. You're a lifelong realtor. So okay, so let's dive into the good stuff. Let's talk about last year and let's talk about this year. So last year was undoubtedly challenging for nearly all agents. I would say 90% of the agents around the country had an absolutely really challenging year. And truth be told, you were no exception to that in the beginning of last year. Last year hit and it was hard. I mean, we were having conversations about like, I need to figure this out. Like I'm lead generating, I'm creating all this, I'm trying to create opportunity. I feel like I'm doing all the right things and nothing's really sticking. And then it's sort of, I mean, it's one of those things like, when people get famous, they're like, oh, they just came out of nowhere. That's probably how it appeared for some people, but they didn't see all the grinding and hustling you were doing in the back. So talk
Yeah.
to me a little bit about your business last year. I mean, I'm talking January, February, March, same time last year. And then let's go into this year because January, February, March this year, you're in the top 10 agents at Real Estate Experts. You've done $7.5 million in real estate sales before March 1st. I mean, you're in the first 2 months, you're doing $7.5 million, which is the majority of people's production all year. So talk to me a little bit about where you were last year and how we got to where we are today. And I'll ask some questions in between, I promise.
Yeah, no, good question. So yeah, last year, and I can even fast forward through 2 quarters. Going through end of Q2, I think I had one closing, and it was my second to worst year ever. My first year in real estate was my worst. 2023, the way it was starting out, was my second worst. Going through it, Q1, I had one closing and it was off a referral. So, when you talk about, the goals that you've got, be they transactional, be they financial, like I was way behind. And I think, to be honest, Joey, and this goes to anyone within real estate, I think I had personal life creeping into it. My mom had passed away in June of 2022. And as much as I thought I was showing up in life, like I look at my numbers from
Mm.
2022, how 2023 started, and I realized once I got momentum in the second half of last year that I wasn't showing up. I think I was going through the motions and making it look like I was, but because personal life always comes into business, right? And it's
Yeah.
hard to kind of sector that out and say, all right, yeah, that happened, but here's what we've got to do. Yeah, last year was a very, very, very slow start for me in real estate.
So when you're in you're in the end of Q2 and you've got one closing in the books, I know anybody in that position is in the position of saying, okay, what am I doing? What do I do next? And so how did you answer that question? What was the answer that came to you?
So somewhere within Q2, I actually had a pretty nice one come in that almost brought me level up to halftime. I always look, because I love football, right? I look at stuff, from a halftime, full-time perspective. I looked at that one closing that, got me almost level at halftime. And I was like, all right, hey, we could still hit the number that we're looking to hit. Because I think you asked me too. You're like, hey, do you want to modify your goals? And I'm never one that wants to modify my goals. Instead of me saying, oh, wow, you're start out short, maybe I'll race it and try something else. I was like, no, damn, like, let's go. Because what I've always been good about is understanding where my business is going to come from. I know what that pipeline looks like. And so on that spreadsheet I've got, I know that if I follow up with those people, if I know I make those calls, that business will come. And I know for me that what the financial number would be. I've kind of shifted my mindset from, hey, the financial number I want to hit to the transactional number I want to hit. But going into Q3, I started leaning a little bit more on you, and saying, all right, but I need you to coach me up. I had been doing some Tom Fery, and that coach we weren't jiving. And at this point, I got to know you pretty well. But again, it was kind of getting that one closing in Q2 that I was just kind of like, instead of sitting like this, I kind of leaned in. I'm like, all right, like the
Mm.
numbers are there, let's go.
And what did the so that Q2 closing sort of got you in a little bit, made you sit up and lean in. And what did leaning in look like for you on a day-to-day basis? Because what I know for sure is that you were showing up differently in Q3 and Q4 than you were in Q1 and Q2. And you were not that your activities maybe shifted, but your energy around your activities shifted and the results shifted. So talk to me a little bit about Q3, Q4, how you hit those numbers, how you started to gain the momentum.
Yeah, I think in going back to it, because
Because you finished strong. You finished strong last year. How many deals did you finish in Q3 and Q4?
I wish I would have prepared for this. I want to say that I finished the year with 9 closings. So maybe I had six
Which
on the back
means
half.
which six or seven of those came in the last 2 quarters of the year.
Right. And the key to what happened is to, what has led to great success here in Q1 in 2024 was those things I started doing. Like I always had it on my calendar that I have the call blocks. Was I really doing them? I looked like I was organized. I wasn't hitting all of them, but they're always there. I think what happened in Q3 was I got a couple more, right? And I'm like, oh, all right, now I'm jogging. Like I got to get to the point where I'm running and I'm sprinting. And, with that, not wanting to modify my goals from a number standpoint. And I think last year I looked at it from a monetary gain standpoint. But yeah, I started holding myself more accountable. If you need an accountability partner, go get one. But, when it comes to like my physical fitness, and you and I have talked about this, Joey, like if I'm going to run a half marathon, if that training run is on the calendar, I will not miss it. So I think similarly in looking what I wanted to end the year with, I was like, all right, here it is on my transaction sheet. If I do these transactions, if I get these people on the contract, if I get more aggressive in my questions, because I think sometimes I can come across of, oh, okay, Joey, your search is on hold. Like I just got a little bit more aggressive, a little more pointed, if you will, which is a better word than aggressive, in my conversations with my clients, that made stuff start to drop.
I think your point is actually really well made and needs to be elaborated on a little bit, which is that it required it required you to do something different than you were previously doing, and you interpret that. Some might interpret that as aggression, and aggression is oftentimes labeled as something negative, but like
Yeah.
you had to get a little bit more. Maybe the word is intentional in how you were choosing to communicate with your clients or with the opportunities that were sitting in front of you.
Yeah.
And the results showed up. I mean, you were keeping your call blocks. You were holding yourself to account, like not just yourself, but you had multiple coaches that you were having conversations with. You got friends involved. I mean, you rallied other people to help hold you accountable. Because let's be honest, like accountability is tough. Motivation is tough. Motivation is waning. You can wake up one morning feeling motivated, wake up the next morning feeling like crap. And so, but now you're in Q1. Okay, so let's talk about this. You're in Q1 of 2024. You've got $7.5 million in closing. You took on this listing, and how many offers did you get on your listing, by the way?
On that listing, that's
How many
pending, we got,
disclosure how many disclosure downloads were there?
yeah, so on that, we had 23 disclosure downloads and 21 offers to come in. And I didn't grossly underprice it. Like I didn't list it at 999, knowing that it's a 1.6, right? I didn't
Sure.
do that to be like, hey guys, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we got this many. Like it was just I priced it effectively, but that's where the market was at.
Oh, but it's not just for the market was that either. You got aggressive or intentional with how you were going to market this property. You started doing things that you'd never done before. I mean, you were on TikTok.
Yeah, I was on TikTok. Can you believe that?
I can. I saw it. I liked it.
Well, I did it because you held my feet to the fire, right? But yeah, going back to that, you had asked me what's my standard operating procedure. And I've got to say, I was guilty at one point in my career that, hey, you get a listing in 45 days, you get a check, right? And you kind of,
Mm.
you put the post in the sign, you host a weekend of open houses. And you would ask me, you're like, Tony, what's your standard operating procedure for listings? I'm like, well, I do this, and that. And you said, you don't really have it documented, do you? I was like, yeah, kind of don't. Like I went through and I documented what I did do. I looked at the gaps to where I didn't do, and I'd listened to the masterclass that you had done with our top producing listing agents. And I started filling in the gaps with those. When it came to this, I pre-marketed this home on Top Agent Network probably 2 or 3 weeks prior to. I already had 12 to 15 agents reach out to me wanting to write preemptive offers. But here's where I got intentional, and that was a good word that you used. I could have sold that thing off market, but for me to do everything to a T on the standard operating procedure that I had created from this, and those things, I told my clients, I said, look, guys, here's when we're going to bring it to market. But that was just for me, it was personal. I don't want to say gain. It was for me to execute on what I said I would execute on, to really maximize what I could around a listing. So if I can walk through that process, what I did was I did the neighborhood invite only. I walked the 300 doors around it. I did the neighborhood open house on a Thursday from 5 to 8. I met a few neighbors, got chummy with one that, he ended up showing up at every open house I did. That Thursday night, 10 p.m., we went live. That Friday, I did an open house from 5 to 8. We got 20 people through. On Saturday and Sunday, because what I did want to do, and I didn't think I needed to do, but I did want to do 2 weekends of open houses. The home was vacant and staged. I hosted open houses on Saturday and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. So basically, the standard 1 to 4, 3 hours. I did that 2x Saturday and 2x Sunday. I had 55 groups through on Saturday, 40 on Sunday. I did a small open house that Monday with offers due on Tuesday. So really, it was just going back to you and saying, hey, Tony, document it, go execute on it. To where it's created not only just what we got from an offer standpoint, but the residual business I will get from that, not only from the conversations with the neighbors, but with unrepresented agents that I met during those open houses, and did I say unrepresented agents?
You meant
Unrepresented
buyers.
clients. Yeah,
Yeah.
unrepresented buyers that came through, but also buyers that were represented. that actually had an agent that was in the backyard and kind of looked around and said, hey, kind of like, looking for other agents. Like I looked at what I did around that open house, and I probably have between 8 to $9.5 million of business that, again, if I execute on these things, that will come to me outside of just this one listing.
So you just this one, the way in which your intentionality around the way in which you chose to handle this listing brought you more opportunity in that from that one open from that 3 days, 4 days of open houses than you've done the entire year in business so far. Like
Yep.
those that if you're listening to this, like that needs to be a takeaway that you take with you till the day you die, like tattooed on the inside of your eyeballs, like put a post it on your mirror. Like you have the opportunity is there, and it's even there, and even when you don't even see it, other people come in and see how you are seeing it, and they want to show up and work with you. So let me ask you the question. You've had an unbelievable transformation, like, and you've always been a great agent. Like you, there's never been a day where you've woken up and anyone could come to you and say, you're not a great agent, you're a phenomenal agent. And you had a really hard start to last year, and you've got a really good last, really like 8 months, 8 months, 9 months coming up. And I know that that 9 months of work is going to pay off for you over the next 9 months as well.
Yep.
So my question would be is, if there was one thing that you've learned in this sort of transformation moment from Q1, Q2 of last year to Q1, Q2 of this year, what would you say that one thing is?
It's an interesting statement that Brett has said since day one of when I got into real estate. Because I had actually served as an ISA for him for 6 months while I was starting to get my license, right? And he's like, dude, he's like, just get these scripts down. You probably don't know what you're saying. It doesn't matter. You come from inside sales background, like just spit the knowledge to him because like, when you do get licensed, then it's gonna be rolling for you. Um, and I remember him saying, because you're going to go like this and the flywheel is going to pick up. And he always said, and he always says, stay in the flywheel. Like when that momentum is there, don't stop. And I
Yep.
think all agents, we know the real estate roller coaster, right? And, sitting in that ISA seat for 6 months and watching some agents on the team at the time have that roller coaster, I said, that'll never be me. That'll never be me. Like, we're not infallible. Like, it's been me. But going back to what I started doing the second half of last year and the way things are at now, like, I feel like I'm pretty close to sprinting and I don't want to stop.
That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
What is
So yeah, that one piece of advice, stay in the flywheel, guys. Once the momentum's
stay in
there,
that damn
don't
flywheel?
stop. Don't stop.
And that's the piece of the puzzle. We've talked about this a lot. We talk about this. I talk about it a lot, at least, which is that we often mistake busyness for business. That we get so busy that we think we're just loaded with business, and then our business drops down, and that's when we fall into that roller coaster.
Yeah.
You and it is a counterbalancing act of being busy and building the business. And you have found a very you've found the sweet spot between maintaining your busyness and continuing to build the business, which I think has created this flywheel effect for you that you've been working so hard for the last year, over a year.
Yeah.
So there's we've got, over your career as a real estate agent, or even just as a human being, you've probably gotten advice from literally a million people. And I always love to end these conversations with the same question, which is, what is the one piece of advice that you've gotten that back in the day that sticks with you today, that still is a piece of your world and how you operate?
Um, Unleash yourself.
Ooh,
I
where'd you
was
hear that from?
always unleash yourself. And coming out of corporate America, those first 2 years, I made a little bit less in year one of real estate than I had in my exit year from corporate America. Year two, I made what I made coming out of corporate. In year three, I made 2x of what I did, but still at that point, again, Brett Jennings, God bless him. He's like, dude, because he'd known me for years. He's like, dude, take the leash off. Like, go. And, just with guidance like that, little things like that. And, there's always someone that could say something that when you think about that, yeah, that next year, again, I'm trying to get off the financial number, but I was 100K more that following year. The next year I was 100K more. Like it just it kept building, right? So we all have limiting beliefs. We all have mindset issues. I do too, right? But I think, that piece of advice of unleashing myself has just really made me say, I just got to push through this paper ceiling that I put upon myself to say, look, don't don't limit yourself. Just do the right
God, I love it.
things, and it's going to come to you. But stay on top of it and continue to do those things.
Well, as someone who has had the pleasure of watching you for the last year and a half to 2 years, you have certainly whatever leash you had on is unleashed. So congratulations, you are in that moment right now.
Thank you,
And
Joey.
so I know for a fact that there are people who are going to be watching this who are like, damn, I'm sort of in like the same boat as he was back in Q1 Q2 of last year, except I'm experiencing it now. And I got questions for this guy that this other guy didn't ask. So, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they want to reach out and ask you some questions about what you're doing?
Yeah, Joey, you did mention I am on TikTok. Don't look for me there. Yeah, if you want to reach out, cell phone or email is probably the easiest way.
And what's your cell phone number?
The real one? Yeah, that was
Yeah,
408-307-3617.
perfect. And then, is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap this up?
No, I thank you for the opportunity, Joey. Like, yeah, it feels good to start really leaning in. And the other thing you said to me too was don't just work in your business, work on your business. And I hadn't been working on my business. And really in those 6 months to close out last year and really going into this, I'm working on my business. But that balance too, I think it's a third is on my business and 2/3 is in my business. Because when you've got that SOP, when you've got that playbook, when you've got the scripts down, every tweak every now and then is fine, but you don't have to
Yeah,
spend 24 hours a day doing it. Perfect is
correct.
the enemy of
It
done.
take it takes time to set those things up, and you've got to give it the time that it deserves. But the benefit of giving it time in the beginning is that you don't have to spend the time in the end. So if you focus that 1/3 of your time on the business, then you get to focus more time in the business. You earn the right to. So thank you for sharing all that, Tony. Thank you for taking 30 minutes with us and going through these last couple of years of your business. I'm so unbelievably grateful for you. I'm thankful that you're here with us, and I know that anybody who, if you have any questions, if you're in the same boat that Tony was, or you just want to understand sort of what the hell he's doing and why it's working, please don't hesitate to reach out to him because he is certainly an expert on frickin' fire. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Joey.